I'm here with comedian Dave Anthony. You know him from his work on the Dollop podcast. The Dollop. Just a dollop.
Yeah, that's it.
Just a little dollop. And he's hilarious, and it's a great podcast. It's about history.
Yeah, American history.
And the problem is people don't know history. That would be the problem.
We did one about Fred Hampton this week, who was, of course, assassinated by the FBI. Blatantly, so much so that the FBI had to pay because they assassinated him. And people
was he a Black Panther?
Yeah, turns out he's a Black Panther. Maybe the one. He might have been the guy because he was 21 and his speaking ability was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't believe it's coming from someone that young. He was the guy that could have really gotten a lot of people to do a lot of stuff.
So they
took
killed
him out
him.
early.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why you got to get rid of those guys. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Robert F. Kennedy, your friend Hampton.
Yep.
Yeah,
get rid of them.
You gotta get rid of them fast.
Quick.
Yeah. Gotta get rid of them fast before they stop any wars. All right, so now we're going to talk about Bernie Sanders. We're talking about third parties, and I came across this speech. Bernie Sanders had this to say. Now, the thing that's remarkable about what he's saying here is he's saying this in 1991. Let's all take a listen.
But in the beginning, this is what would happen. You had the Democratic candidate running for something and the Republican candidate. Historically, Vermont had been a Republican state, moderate Republican, not right-wing, and then Democrats. And then we had a third party. And what would happen is debate after debate, television program after television program, the progressive third party people would in fact get the best response from the audiences. And people would say, you guys make a lot of sense. And then you go up to them and say, you're going to vote for us? And they say, oh, of course we're not going to vote for you. You can't win. You're going to vote for the Democrat. You're a much better candidate. Everything you're saying is true, but we can't waste our vote. Waste our vote was the expression. So if there's any term that drives me crazy, is this quote-unquote waste our vote. Now, my own view, and it has been my view for many, many years, is that what we need in this country is what Jackson calls a rainbow coalition. But it has to be done outside of the Democratic Party.
He's saying this in 1990. This is before Bill Clinton completely sold out the Democratic Party. And people don't understand how much he did. Bill Clinton became a Republican and did things only Republicans could get done, like NAFTA, because what Bill Clinton did was split half the Democratic Party, because before, George Herbert Walker Bush couldn't get the Democrats in Congress to go along with NAFTA. Bill Clinton could. He's saying this before all that, before he deregulated Wall Street, before he deregulated the telecommunications industry. That's back when we still had 50 giant media companies. Now we have 6. Now we're going to have 5. There's a new merger.
Yeah.
There's a new merger coming. Nobody seems to be upset about it. Hey, what's that?
No, that's not true. The other 4 companies are.
Yeah, the other 4 companies. So now we're going to have 5. So this is before all that. Let's see what else he has to say.
And I say that here, and I'm delighted to be here with DSA because they are a non-sectarian group, and we have worked with them, and we recognize that honest people will have differences of opinion. But my own feeling is the arguments of working within the Democratic Party and without go as follows. The argument for working within the Democratic Party is that people say, well, that's where the working class is, that's where the unions are, let's stay within that. People are familiar with it. That's been their home for many, many years. There's truth to that, some truth to that. The argument against working within the Democratic Party is that for millions of Americans, both parties are looked upon with derision, with disrespect. Polls show that half the American people don't even know the difference between the Democratic and Republican Party. And I can tell you very honestly, this is just as a practical politician, which is what I am, when I campaigned in Vermont, and I don't think Vermont is terribly different in this respect than any other state in the Union. We went all over the state and we shook probably 30, 40,000 hands. I don't think that more than a dozen times people came up to me and said, Bernie, I can't vote for you because I'm a really strong Democrat and I believe in the Democratic Party, or I'm a strong Republican and I believe in the Republican Party. They don't. I think what ends up happening is people don't see much of a choice. There's the option. You got the Democrats, Republicans. Sometimes this one's a little bit worse. Sometimes this one's a little bit better. But I think that by standing up and telling the truth, that both parties are controlled by big money, which is clearly the case, that neither party, and I don't want to, and I should tell you, by the way, that within
1991, he's saying this.
And imagine how much worse it's got with the Supreme Court making their decisions.
Yes. This is back 1991. He's saying it, that the Democratic Party, both parties are bought by big money. This is before Bill Clinton. This is crazy.
Congress and the Democrats, you have a lot of good people, and I'm not here to put them down, and you know their names, good people who year after year have fought the good fight. But I think that nationally, the party has, on issue after issue, sold out so many times that if you go before the people and say, hey, I'm a Democrat, you don't usually generate a lot of enthusiasm.
You don't usually generate a lot of enthusiasm. So
1991, we're coming out of Reagan, we're coming out of Bush,
George Herbert Walker Bush.
We're coming, the Iran Contra stuff. A lot of criminal behavior in that administration. As a liberal, you are feeling, Mondale was crushed, Dukakis was crushed. We've lost so much of Congress. I mean, Congress is still hanging in there, but it's chipping away. You can see this stuff happening, and so when Bill Clinton is elected, we partied like. I mean, it was the greatest thing ever because we had lived our lives
under Reagan
and Bush. We had 12 years of Republican rule.
That was tough. That was a tough 12 years.
And this is at a time he's talking about stuff that we don't care about because we just want to win.
We just want to win.
We just want to win.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's where the Democrats are now. We want to win. We want to win. But what if we win with someone who is basically Republican? So what?
You go back and you look at old opinion, pieces in newspapers, and you'll find every 4 years the exact arguments that are being made today being made since the 60s. Someone sent me one from 72, and I was reading it, and I was like, this is the you could just switch names.
Really?
It's the exact same thing. It's evil. This guy will destroy everything. It hasn't changed. The problem is like, when are the people voting for this going to say we're destroying ourselves? Because right now, pragmatism looks like slow failure to me. Although it's quickening, isn't it?
Yeah.
But pragmatism isn't things are getting better slowly. It's actually things are getting worse slowly.
Yes.
Are they better for social issues? Sure. But what does social issues mean if your life is crumbling and you're living in a car?
Yeah. So if I can now get gay married, but I can't afford health insurance.
Right. That's what it is. Like, that's the choice you've made.
I can now get gay married, but the housing market's going to crash and the banks are going to crash again. And by the way, I make less than 50% of all wage earners make less than $30,000 in America.
And you know what? When Trump came, the social issues were so won by the Democrats that Republicans were now fighting over where trans people can shit. That's how much it was done. It's done. They had the Supreme Court. They didn't reverse Roe versus Wade. They're not going to.
They're never going to reverse Roe versus Wade.
None of that's happening. That's not happening. All that's happening is they're putting in pro-business Supreme Court justices who are making it. If you go look at the statistics of when labor used to win versus when business used to win, it was like 50-50. Now I believe it's up to like 93% for business and 7% for. It is just a slaughter for pro-business in front of the Supreme Court.
A slaughter.
You are there, and you're watching it, and everything's falling apart, and you're like, we got to vote for that Supreme Court, really?
That's why people say you have to vote for Hillary because of the Supreme Court. Even though there's this report out today from McClatchy that she was thinking of choosing a Republican to be their first Supreme Court nominee, just like Brooke with Merrick Garland.
That guy.
Anyway, What? What guy?
Well, that guy, yeah, he's not what we want.
Merrick
If you're someone from the left, you don't want that guy.
No.
Who wants that guy?
No.
And everyone just says, well, how are we going to get it by the... Just keep nominating. What's the difference? They didn't do it anyway. Just keep nominating
How did they
them.
get
Make them
Scalia?
do it.
How did they get Scalia?
How did they get Scalia?
Why can't we have a Scalia on the left? Why can't we have Cornel West?
Well, they won't do it. Who cares if they won't do it? Shove it down their throats.
John McCain just said last week that they're gonna block anybody she nominates. Did you see that?
Yeah.
And then of course he backtracked. But that's what
they're going to do.
That's what they're gonna do. That's what they're doing right now.
And then
they're doing it right now.
And then she will go, okay, I'll give you what you want, which
Yes!
is actually what I want.
Yes.
It's such a game, and the Supreme Court thing is just, I mean,
And the
you're right.
mush-brained people who push that argument, it's just mush-brained thinking. That same old of Supreme Court, Supreme Court, Supreme Court.
So that's all you're voting for, then. In essence, that's all. That's it. That's
forever,
the whole thing.
We'll do this forever then. And we get to have wars forever, and we get to have crushing environmental policies. We get to overthrow governments in Honduras.
Yeah.
We get to spend a couple $1 trillion a year on war. We get to repeal habeas corpus. We get to torture people. We get to keep Guantanamo Bay open. We get to have no union protection in America. We get to outsource all our jobs. We get
Supreme Court,
though.
Yeah. Well, the abortion's legal. Oh wait. It's not, because in Texas they've gotten rid of them all, and in all the states at the state level they're annihilating it.
That's
So why don't you stop focusing on the Supreme Court and focus on the fact that at the state level it's being obliterated, because that's where the problem is, not at the Supreme Court level with abortion. That drives me crazy when people bring that up, and I'm like, it's already, they did it and they had control of it and they didn't do it. Look at what's happening at the state level.
So you're saying that the conservatives had control of the Supreme Court and they didn't overturn Roe versus Wade. I'm with you. Okay, this has been
I'm ignorant.
I'm dumb.
I don't know how things work, Jimmy.
I'm fairy dusty.
I just keep seeing everything falling apart, and I don't know.
I just think we could have universal health care, but people say, how are you going to afford cheaper drugs?